Welcome, everybody, to Global Leaders Local Coffee. We are back after a bit of a hiatus. Lots going on in the Flywire world, but excited to get back here and have a few more guests on the show. Today, I've got Matt Harris from Bain Capital Ventures. Matt, welcome.
Great to be here, Mike. Good to see you. And I'm glad you started doing the show again. It feels like an amazing tradition.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Help navigate, I think, some crazy times in the last 18 months and, got to meet some great people. So I appreciate you carving out time. So first question, are you a coffee drinker, coffee or tea preference that you have?
I'm a matcha latte guy myself. My colleague Merritt, my partner, got me into these things. And like when I'm on good behavior, I do the matcha thing. And if you see me drinking coffee, you know that something's gone a little haywire. Although I will say, I live in New York City, and we were outside the city for some part of COVID. And when I came back, I found myself wanting to go to every coffee shop I could just to
see people,
just to see human beings and like overtip some baristas and just to feel like a New Yorker again. So I went through a really strong coffee phase in this past spring.
Well, you are officially responsible for the coffee addiction in the Massaro house. So I don't know if you even know this, but I'm a Phil's coffee guy. It came from a holiday Bain Capital Ventures packet, a couple of years back. And it is on like recurring order at our house. So
that's serious coffee, Mike.
Serious coffee. Yeah, there's no way I can go to anything else, I think, at this point. So, well, not that the audience needs probably an introduction to Bain Capital Ventures or probably even to you, but you mind giving the audience a bit of overview of, BCV, what makes you guys special and the specific areas you focus on?
Sure. Yeah. So Bain Capital Ventures is the venture capital and growth arm of Bain Capital, which is a very large alternative asset management firm based in Boston. Bain Capital got into the venture business 21 years ago. And I think we're probably known for a couple of things. One, we're really stage agnostic. So we partner with founders to help build their companies really at any stage. We like to say we want to back the most important companies in technology as soon as possible. So we're happy to do a seed round, pre-seed, Series A, but if we miss those, like we did with Flywire, we're happy to lead a Series B, Series C, whatever it is. We just want to, partner with founders who see the world the way that we see it. And then the second thing is we really invest in our domain expertise and leadership. So in my case, as you know, Mike, that's fintech. That's what I've done for the past 20 years, but that's really characteristic of our partnership. We think one of the things that founders look for is board members and investors who really know their business and who can help expand their networks and extend them through waking up every day and thinking about the industry that they're in. So those are a couple distinctive elements to our platform.
Yeah, for sure. And full disclosure for the audience, if they don't know, BCV is an investor in Flywire, known Matt for 6+ years, served on the board. So getting that out there so that there's no questions about it. You're the first one I've gotten an external question. So, from the audience prior to a broadcast here. And the question's really around the board's role in venture capital backed businesses. The question is, what makes a great board versus a good or mediocre board? You've probably sat on many. And any background you can give the audience on what makes one great?
Yeah, I mean, the first answer really is diversity, which actually often ends up being like the last answer, in practice over time, which is a shame. And I don't mean diversity merely in terms of ethnicity and gender, but it's really in terms of kind of framework. What you want are, I think, a couple investors. People say in the board context that venture capitalists are like martinis. One isn't enough. 2's perfect, 3's too many. And that's my experience. I mean, you really want 2 VCs and you get all the value you need. Because most venture capitalists are kind of relatively generic company builder helper types. And so between 2, you get all the advice you need of that sort. I personally, obviously, think that domain expertise is important in that regard. So if you could have one of our fellow board members, Alex Finkelstein, fantastic company builder VC, somebody like that, and then somebody who really knows your domain. I think you're good in terms of investors. And then let's focus on independence. I think a 5-person board with 2 independents, 2 investors, and the CEO is the platonic ideal to me. And I think you want independents who bring all those other elements of diversity, certainly operating expertise to complement the investing expertise of your VC board members, but also obviously gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, worldview, geographic location. I mean, there's just a long list of things you want anything other than a monoculture on, and you should be highly thoughtful about that. And then a couple other things I'll say about high performing boards. Having a lead director is really useful. At Flywire, Philip Reese has been extraordinary. I mean, he just sort of helps to set the agenda, helps to carry water so that the CEO doesn't have to do everything, brings efficiency to the process, helps to corral board members who need corralling. So I think a lead director of some sort can be very useful for a CEO as kind of a force multiplier. And then I think setting a culture where the board understands that when they're in that room, they're there to help all shareholders and help the company. And yes, outside of that room, they have to maybe behave like a shareholder sometimes and, kind of defend and their parochial position, in whatever class of stock they're invested in or whatever. But that can't ever get into the boardroom, because if people lose trust, if people think that information's leaking out or that decisions are being advocated that help one person but not everyone, next thing you know, you lose the ability to function as a cohesive group.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Great answer. It amazes me how few companies actually have that, diverse view of perspectives in different roles. Really hard, right? Really hard to scale a company if you don't have that level of support in the boardroom and kind of that well-rounded nature of it all. So
one of the things, Mike, I'm so fascinated by this topic. I mean, when investors invest in companies, the tradition is you say, oh, and I want a board seat. Right. So you raise an A, a B, a C, a D. And next thing you know, you've got these people who have these rights to be in the boardroom. And, as a founder, as a CEO, I think when you get those term sheets, you should ask them, why does this make sense? Are you putting yourself forward as the very best director for this company? Because that's what we're trying to do here, trying to build a massive, important company. Are you the best, are you the 4th VC that would be added to the board? Are you making the argument for the benefit of all shareholders, including yourself, you're going to be the difference maker? It's a hard conversation to have, but that should be the lens through which these investors think about board composition, rather than the selfish lens of, I want credit for this. I want the ability to monitor this. I need control. Like, those are all really negative incentives, right? Really negative motivations. And I think, CEOs, Mike, like you and many others who are running successful companies have a lot of leverage to say, hey, let's think about governance in terms of what's best for the company, not what's best for your firm. And I don't hesitate to do that, be my advice.
Yeah. So well said. Once that board gets out of control, once it gets too big, I know we've always had a great policy about visitors, guests, and have had some great, principals and VPs and analysts from firms come into our meetings temporarily to learn. And you got to be careful, because otherwise you'll end up with a 20-25 person board meeting, and really hard to handle that. So I think that's great advice. One question I ask a lot of people, Matt, is, if you look back, I know you're a big fan of history and understanding history. If you look at your own history, your own childhood, would people be surprised to see you doing what you're doing? Were there any indication, signs along the way that brought you to the career and where you are?
I think people would be surprised. I mean, everyone who knew me, including myself, thought I was going to be a doctor. My parents are doctors, academic doctors in Boston. And you grow up in that kind of household, and that just becomes kind of the expectation. Now, my brother went into a further left field and is like a professional Buddhist mindfulness guru. But going into business was a really contrarian move for my parents. When I came home from college after I figured out I wasn't going to be pre-med anymore and told them that I was thinking about iBanking, they kind of looked at me and said, like, is that a part of ophthalmology? There's really very much a left turn relative to what my parents thought I would do, maybe even expected me to do, and what I had kind of been brought up to do. And I don't regret that, but I do think sometimes about what life would be like if you literally went to work and it just helped people all day long. I try to help people all day long, but I'm not saving any lives here as a venture capitalist. So I do think about that sometimes, but generally speaking, I'm very satisfied with how my career has worked so far.
Yeah, it's so important to we always talk about it a lot at Flywire. How do you know yourself? How do you see what you're good at, see what you enjoy doing, figure out what kind of makes you fulfilled professionally and personally. And I always find it fascinating to understand how people got to where they are, and was it part of the master plan or not. Next topic for me, and then maybe one or two more, and then you can turn the tables if you want. You've seen COVID, you've seen the impact on obviously the world in the last 18 plus months, still kind of on our path back from it. You've seen companies navigate it. Any consistent themes you've seen? What are the companies doing that have, what has it taught companies? What has it taught you from a business perspective, and how to navigate?
Yeah, I think there's something in human nature that keeps us from being comfortable changing our minds, right? We stake out a position, and there's something in us that generally wants to defend it and not change our mind. And you see it in the news, CDC changes their advice on something and everyone's up in arms. How could you told us this one thing. Facts and circumstances change. And so you have to change with them. I mean, sticking to your position in light of changing facts and circumstances, that's the height of insanity to me. And so what I've seen in the CEOs and founders that I get to work with is this, high conviction ideas held loosely. So we're going to do this thing, and then we're going to pay careful attention to the environment, and we're going to change the thing if we need to change the thing. And I've seen less successful CEOs stick to their guns, well past the point of illogic. And I've seen on the other end of the spectrum, in fact, people being unwilling to make any statements. And that to me is just, you need to have the courage to say, based on what we know now, here's our policy, and then not be afraid to make that change. And what I've seen is that people understand that this is a global pandemic, and your team will go along with you. They do need to be led. They need to be communicated with. They understand that things are going to change, but don't just leave them in a vacuum either. So that the concept really of strategic flexibility, Mike, has been newly reinforced to me, given the shifting sands of this pandemic.
Yeah. Well said. And last question for me, joy, fulfillment, obviously a tough year for so many, but it's something you learned in your personal life, or something that, that you found joy or fulfillment in, even in the face of the pandemic?
Dogs, Mike. I obviously love having dinner with my kids through the pandemic, and we moved out of the city to this rural spot, and I found real joy in nature. But honestly, just being home, like my dog is sitting over there, and just being 6 feet from my dog at all times, 24 hours a day, is made me so incredibly happy in this unpredictable way. And so I think about going back to the office, and I'm excited to go back to the office. I just got to figure out how to smuggle my dog in, Mike. I mean, this is a new challenge for me.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. Well, any final questions you want to throw one back at me before we wrap up?
I'm curious. You've probably answered this in front of this audience too, but I know a little bit about how you grew up in much more of a business-oriented household than I did. How did you think about your career? I mean, you're running a multi-billion-dollar public company now. Is that, something that you wrote down on a piece of paper when you were 6 and you finally made it? Or, I mean, how preordained was this?
No, definitely not. If I look back, I was fortunate to be able to go to a great high school in the northern side of Massachusetts. And, I think back a lot to, career days, right? And it was doctors, lawyers, accountants, insurance, small business owner, brokers, that type of stuff. I know, like, tech never came in, entrepreneurship never came in, right? I mean, you're talking, early 90 type time frame. And so in hindsight, I look back, like I had an Apple IIe when I was, I had access to one when I was 7, 8. I remember installing modems in a laptop in high school, and building my own computer, and like loving that, just swapping out parts. So I love tech, but just never assumed anything about a career in it. And actually I was, I actually was set up to go biology major. My son says that that's why I'm good at putting on Band-Aids. But I did like one semester, in that. And I just couldn't see the, doing it forever and doing it for so long, right? These large lecture halls just seemed like you were so far away from practicing it. And there was so much just kind of classroom learning to do. So I was fortunate. I had a family that supported me, and I ended up going and visiting Babson, which is where I ended up transferring to out of biology. And I loved it. I loved the fact that you could build a business with other people. It was kind of a combination of ideas. You could look at case studies from all different angles. Was fortunate in early career to get working in a couple of tech companies, startups that were successful. And once it happened, I just knew I was addicted to the environment, and trying to keep as much of that as I can at Flywire here today, even as we grow and scale.
So let's take it past Flywire. So it's 30 years from now. Flywire is the biggest corporation in the world, and you're set to retire. What do you do after? Like, what would your next act look like?
Yeah, I love the challenge of supporting organizations that grow. Really passionate about supporting a whole series of nonprofits that my wife and I do today. I'd love to just be able to contribute to those. Help people figure out challenges. I love building teams, seeing teams be built, seeing people do things that they're told they can't do or were impossible. We've run through so many of those walls together here at Flywire. I just love that, right? I just think people can overcome so much and accomplish so many great things. So hopefully I'll find some businesses I can help do that. Hopefully I'll find some nonprofits I can do that, and probably spend some time with some dogs too, because I enjoy that quite a bit as well.
I love that kind of answer, Mike, because sometimes you ask people that and they'll say, like, I want to do something totally different. And it always makes me think, like, boy, you can't love your job that much, right? If what you're thinking about is changing 180 degrees as soon as you possibly can, like, there's something sad about that. But what you said is how I think. Like, I just want to keep doing this. I might do it in a nonprofit context versus strictly for profit. I might incorporate more teaching into it, but like helping people reach their potential, it's not the same thing as helping them, recover from cancer or whatever, your biology degree or my pre-med would have helped us do. But I mean, it's not something I ever want to stop doing, even if the business card changes at some point way down the road. So it's a great answer.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I couldn't agree more. You got to love what you do. We always tell that to Flymates, right? Find that personal and professional fulfillment. Otherwise, it's going to be a painful journey. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up. Matt, thanks so much. Appreciate you joining, and feel free to drop comments or questions for Matt or I in the chat. Thanks all.
Great to be here, Mike. Thanks.